Hello, Lindsay. How are you?
I'm feeling pretty good today. We're getting towards the end of the week here, so feeling great, feeling great. Aubrey, what
Yes.
are we getting into today,
Ooh,
though?
I have a fun question for you to start this out.
Okay, I'll do my best to answer.
Yes. So, what do you think is the difference between saying FYI and for your information?
I think for your information feels a little more direct to me, and
Hmm.
FYI feels a little more playful. I feel like it's more common. Am I right?
Yeah. I mean, this is really interesting. I would have said the same probably. I
Uh,
probably would have said before looking into this, I would have said they mean the same thing. And one
yeah.
is the acronym. So maybe the
Uh,
acronym's a little more casual,
yeah.
informal. But
Hmm.
the more I looked into this, the more I realized how different they are and that
Really?
you probably actually should never say for your information. I'm going to make an argument for that today.
Interesting. Okay, now you've gotten me intrigued here, Aubrey. So let's
Okay.
see why we should never say it. So should we cover FYI first for our listeners because this is the one they've probably seen,
Yes.
heard? Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's cover FYI and then for your information. And then we're going to give you guys more polite options
Okay.
and really talk about intonation today because these intonation is really key on the message that you're sending with today's phrases.
Got it. Okay. All right. So what is FYI? It's an acronym, right?
Yes, right? So this is said or written. Often we put it in emails to share information without expecting an immediate response or action, right? You're just giving someone information and they don't really need to respond usually.
Okay. So more written. Yeah. So for example, FYI, I'm running to the grocery store if you need anything.
Yeah, or
Okay.
the car is out of gas, FYI, right? So this is
Uh,
just and these are spoken phrases, but it's also written for sure, where you're just letting someone know something and it's sort of
yeah.
implied that you don't need them to respond.
It's kinda like, "Hey, I hope you listen to this. You should pay attention to this, but I'm not expecting a response," right? Is
Right.
basically what that means. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Mhm.
interestingly, for your information is what FYI stands for,
Right.
supposedly, right?
Mhm.
But our language, English, has really evolved to where FYI is now the only one that really means that. And for your information is always a confrontational way to correct someone. Like
Mhm.
sometimes jokingly between friends, sometimes angrily, but people almost never say for your information the long way out like there's almost always this
There's
connotation.
some energy behind it, some
Yes,
anger maybe, some
and I had to
confrontation.
think about this. I was trying to come up with examples where I could just say for your information and it would no, it's like that's weird. It either sounds weird and I wouldn't say it or it sounds
Right.
confrontational.
So you're saying you wouldn't say, "The car is out of gas for your information,"
Right.
right?
No.
Yeah.
It's all of a
No,
sudden
too
I'd be
much.
like, "Oh, sorry. Did I should have filled
Right.
it up, I guess." Like there feels confrontation.
You
It feels
okay.
confrontational.
So when we say for your information, we're adding a layer of confrontation. Okay.
Mhm. So
So what would
maybe someone accuses you of leaving the milk out and you'd be like,
Mhm.
"For your information, I was not the one who left the milk out."
That sounds like a fight, right?
It
It sounds
sounds
like a
like a
fight.
fight, yeah. But, you might say, FYI, I was and that still is going to be kind of confrontational just because of the
Yeah,
context here, but I love
right.
that you pointed out, I wouldn't say, "For your information, I'm running to the grocery store if you need anything."
No,
If someone said that to me, I'd be like, what did I
that
do
would be
wrong? What's the
strange.
problem?"
It feels more like, you're directly talking to me and you wanna say something, right? It is
Feels
very different. I
confrontational, and then I'm confused, like, "Why? Why are you
Yeah,
upset?"
interesting. Or we can also, in this same confrontational way, we could put it at the end of a sentence. I was
Right.
not the last one to have the key for your information, right? So again, you're
Exactly.
standing up for yourself. There might be a fight going on. Someone's accusing someone of breaking into a house. I don't know because
Right?
you had a
Yes.
key. Whatever's happening.
Yeah, and keep in mind, even if we said FYI here because of the context, right? For like, I wasn't the last one to have the key, FYI. Like there is still a little bit of confrontation here just because of the
Yes.
message of what you're saying.
Right.
But if you really do want to just say FYI, like we use it all the time, you really just want to give someone some information and you don't need a response back. Our recommendation, after I had to think about this a lot, I thought of a lot of examples. I would never say for your information. I wouldn't say it out. I would
Well,
say FYI and then
yes.
reserve for your information when you want to be confrontational.
When you're upset and you're standing up for yourself, for
Yeah,
example, yeah. No,
exactly.
this is good to know. You really don't think about it, but then when you
Mm-mm.
dig in, you go deeper, you realize, yeah, they're not the same. So,
Exactly.
we do have other options though for our listeners today, yeah?
Yes, right? There are more polite ways because sometimes you
Mhm.
do need to get this message across.
Yeah.
But again, we want to be polite. And then we want to be careful with our intonation here because we're going to teach you 3 phrases that are more polite, but they could sound rude, confrontational, sarcastic, depending on the intonation.
Yes, I
So the
like
first
this
one
one.
is
Yes.
just so you know.
Right. So this one you gotta be real careful here with the
Mhm.
intonation, as you said.
Mhm. Yeah, so give it
Uh,
to us first, Lindsay, a sentence where it's, like, polite. We're trying to politely let
okay.
someone know that we weren't the one that had the keys last.
Okay,
Now
here's
they're
something
lost,
polite. So just so you know, I didn't have the keys last. I'm not sure who lost them, but it wasn't me. All right.
right?
So
Much more
that's
polite than
yeah.
for your information.
Yes. Yes. So that was a more pleasant, polite, non-accusatory tone or
Right.
non-defensive tone, let's say.
Yes, but with
Uh,
the exact same words, if
yeah.
you change the intonation, it still could be very accusatory. It could sound rude, right? I'll give you that
Okay.
example.
I'm ready.
Just so you know, I didn't have the keys last. I'm not sure who lost them, but it wasn't me.
Ugh. Oh gosh.
The tone is
Wrath.
so different. It's fascinating.
Wow, yeah. Ooh, sends shivers down your spine, right? It definitely this can be a little scary to hear. For like this can if someone is saying that with that kind of tone, you know that things are taking a bad turn in your
Yes, right? They're
conversation,
very
right?
defensive for some
Yes.
reason, they're angry, right? So
Just
you
so
wanna
you
think
know.
about you can be using the exact same vocabulary, and depending on your tone of voice, your intonation, you're sending a totally different message, which you especially have to think about in a second language because it's kind of harder to hear the tone. You're thinking about the vocabulary and the grammar, so you have to be aware. Listen back, rewind this, and listen to Lindsay's and then mine, and I'm sure you can hear the difference in tone.
Yeah, and this next one we're gonna do the same thing. So
Yes.
we could definitely do this in we could start so what is it, Aubrey? What's the
Yeah, so the
phrase?
phrase is, "By the way," and Lindsay, if you wanna give us
Okay.
the polite
Yeah, sure. I'll
version.
be the polite one on the
Yes,
podcast today.
perfect.
There we go. By the way no, let me start again. So, by the way, I wasn't the one who left the milk out.
Yeah, and
It's
this
hard
is
for me to
kinda
get into the
this is kind of
mode.
hard anyway because
Yeah,
just with the context, like,
it's a little
you
fresh.
like,
It's a
let's
little
say
fresh.
you've been accused of leaving the milk out, like,
Yeah,
you need to get across the message that you weren't the one that did it.
right.
The worst thing you can say, I think, is "for your information." Is, like, the most rude. These are
Right.
better options, but they're still it's interesting. It's really tricky. It's hard to share that message without being defensive
It
because you
is
are defending yourself,
right, it feels fresh. Yes, maybe say something like, "Oh, by the way, I wasn't the one who left the milk out. I'm not sure who did."
right?
Uh,
When you add that, "I don't know who did
add a few
it, but it
things.
wasn't me." That does
Mhm.
help. The more you
Okay.
say, the more you add does help, but
Right.
again, this can be said with very rude, defensive intonation. I'll give us that.
Okay.
By the way, I wasn't the one who left the milk out. It's like every word changes, right? Because 'Cause I'm
Drama,
adding
drama,
this snarky
drama.
tone.
Okay, yeah. So when you hear that from someone, you know, again, there's a fight brewing. Maybe there's already drama in your home,
Right.
for example, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Third one, Aubrey, is for what it's worth.
Yes,
This is a
right?
good one too. Yeah.
Mhm. So give us the polite way
Okay.
if,
Okay.
you're trying to let someone know, maybe you've been accused of being late a
Yeah.
lot. What could you
Yeah.
say?
Okay. Well, for what it's worth, I always try to be on time.
Nice,
It's
right?
pretty
That's pretty
polite.
polite, right? It's a nice way to saying,
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of this for what it's worth does soften it more.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I'll give the rude version depending on your tone. You could say, "For what it's worth, I try to always be on time." And this sounds like I'm accusing the other person of always being late.
Oh, yes. Okay. And
I'm
there's extra
emphasizing,
meaning in there.
"I try to always be on time." I don't know about you.
It is super interesting and super important for our listeners to hear both versions of all three of these expressions, right?
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. You don't think about there could be hidden meaning or double meaning. You could be accidentally accusing someone of something when it's
Right.
not in the words you're saying, it's implied by your tone.
Wow. Okay, Aubrey, let's move on. Let's bring this all into a role play. And just so I'm clear, it sounds like we're in a fight. So we need to be fresh, 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 fresh here.
Yeah, so the good thing is we are friends who fought recently, but we have now
Oh,
met up to talk
we've,
about it. So we're still gonna
ah,
use these phrases, but we're trying to be
oh,
polite.
we're not in a
We're
fight.
not
Okay,
currently
we
fighting.
were in a fight before. Okay, then never mind my comment. Okay.
Yes, yes.
All right, here we go. All right.
I'll start us out. For what it's worth, I'm really sorry about what happened.
Oh, thanks. By the way, I was mostly just surprised and I probably shouldn't have reacted the way I did.
You had every right to be upset. I'm sorry about saying, for your information, I'm not the one who wrecked the car. That was uncalled for.
I appreciate that. Just so you know, I found out later why you were upset, and then I understood.
I still shouldn't have taken it out on everyone, though. Thanks for understanding.
Yeah, the tone here clearly is a make-up conversation, right?
Yep.
Yeah. We're making
Hmm.
up. We are kind of coming back together and we're saying, "Oh, we're apologizing."
Yeah.
Yeah?
And all of these phrases, right, are perfect for this, where we're trying to say, FYI, but in a more polite way. Like, I want you to know that, but it's couched with apology and explanation of why something
Mhm.
happened.
Yes. So should we go back through them one more time?
Yeah, let's do
Yeah.
it.
So you said, "For what it's worth, I'm really sorry." And again, you could feel our tone of voice is different. It's kind of like a little bit more pleasant, more calm, more even keeled a little bit.
Yes, right. And this, because we're talking about a fight we had and we're trying to smooth things over, it would make no sense to do the rude version. You would want to really be
Yeah.
careful to keep that out of, to be like, for what it's worth, I'm really so like if you sound sarcastic, it wouldn't make sense because you're
Yeah.
genuinely trying to smooth things over.
Yes. And then I said, "Thanks. By the way, I was mostly just surprised." And so here you're just saying, "By the way, you're just informing. I'm informing you." Right?
Exactly. Yep. And
Mhm.
then I had to quote myself in the past in order to use for your information, right?
Yes.
So it's like, I'm sorry when I said, and then I'm kind of mimicking my own tone as I apologize, right? I'm sorry about saying for your
Yeah.
information, I'm not the one who wrecked the car. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I'm like, if I quote myself here, that I can include it in the role play.
That makes sense because
Yeah.
we remember, guys, if you go back to earlier in the episode, we said that just saying for your information becomes quite serious and quite confrontative, right?
Yes,
So
exactly.
we're having a more coming back together apology conversation. Yeah.
Right. And then
Okay.
you said, just so you know, I found out later why you're upset. And then I understood. So, all of
Hmm.
these, you could take this whole role play and remove all of these because what they're trying to do is add this extra meaning of like, I'm just letting you know this, just FYI, same meaning, right? Just so that you know.
Hmm.
And they're not necessary. You could just say, I appreciate that. I found out later why you were upset, but we add this to create really even more politeness to let them know
Yeah.
like it's important to me that you know this.
Yeah, it makes it more personal, the conversation,
Right.
right? Yes. Okay. And we want to send our listeners back to an episode that we just did. Was that episode
Yeah, look,
2316?
I'm looking back to see what was the
Yes.
number.
I think it was 2315. 2315.
Nice.
So just
Yes.
earlier this week. Who asked you rude phrases to avoid in English?
Yes. This
Okay.
is where we also talked about some phrases that you could accidentally sound really rude. Politeness is so important in English,
Yeah.
especially you don't want to accidentally send a message you don't intend.
Oh my gosh, it is huge. And this is great. We have been going into a lot of stuff about politeness, rudeness, and yeah, how to make sure that we're not unintentionally being rude. Exactly.
Yeah, and this is
Love
so
it.
interesting. Like I had never thought about before how FYI and then when you actually say that out for your information really
Hmm.
has such a different meaning, conveys such a different feeling. So
Yes.
definitely be aware.
Yeah. This is, I mean, if connection is our highest value, which it is on this show, we should be really, looking into this and making this a priority, especially as our listeners move up into the C1 level, right? This becomes the priority. It's not so much about grammar. We've pretty much got the grammar. We're adding new vocabulary, but it's about this. It's about what your words convey, the meaning behind
Exactly.
your words. Yeah.
Right? We don't want you to accidentally ruin connections by having these hidden meanings that you're not aware of, right?
Mhm.
There are these subtle nuances, these double meanings sometimes, and intonation really changes meaning.
Yes. Before we finish up today, I just want to remind our listeners, guys, you can always listen to the podcast in our iOS or Android app. But when you listen over there, you get special features. For example, for premium users, we now get a special weekly role play that no one else gets anywhere else but in the app. And what is that role play all about,
I know
Aubrey?
it's amazing. All the keywords from all of the episodes for the week, we put them
Mhm.
into one role play. So you can see how these unrelated vocabulary words could all come up in one conversation. It's really interesting. And that's just for users of the app.
Yeah, exactly. So that along with transcripts right on your phone as you listen to the episode. So guys, go over to allearsenglish.com/app and download the app and give it a try. There's a 7-day free trial, so you can try that out. All
Yes,
right.
awesome. Check it out.
All right, Aubrey. Talk soon.
Yep. See
Bye.
you next time. Bye.
Bye.